I was born on July 9, 1943. At that time, my father was working in the resistance against the Japanese invaders. Even though my father passed away when I was very young, not even 10 years old, probably 9 years old, at the time, the influence that my father had on my path of development was extremely large. Originally, my father was a teacher at a medical school and really had no relationship to the war effort whatsoever. But during the war against the Japanese, he was going through Jiangxi province with his students, and he saw that behind the Chinese lines there were very many people, soldiers, who had been injured with no one to care for their wounds. So at that point he took his students and they actually, instead of continuing to the southwest where they had been planning on retreating to, he stayed there with these students and began working at the military hospital there. Even though I wasn't born at the time, my father started his work at the hospital in 1937. But I heard about it later from other people, and the influence it had on me was profound. I know that his dedication, which led him actually to become the leader or the head of the military hospital after a couple years of hard work, and just the sort of dedication to society and the responsibility that he felt there for the greater society, influenced me in a very deep way. At that time, when my father decided to go and work at the hospital, he could have gone, very easily gone to a much safer place, far away. And during those 8 years that he was working there, during the war against the Japanese invaders, our family paid a very high price. I had 3 siblings actually that, because of inadequate medical care, passed away during that time. So the sort of sacrifice that our family had to make for my father's decision was quite a large one. Another very large influence that my father had on me was that during that time, after 1949, when there was a victory over the Japanese invaders, the Kuomintang, or KMT, had already become very corrupt at that point, and my father had already refused to be a part of some of their activities because of that sort of corruption that was in the party, and the sort of influence that had on me, because obviously, he was very gifted and could have gone a long way within the party, but because of his decision not to do that, it's really influenced me to think, as my father did, that what's important is to work on behalf of all of the people and the country as a whole, and not for a particular political party. And I think that that's been something that has influenced me very strongly, to not really desire to be affiliated with a particular party, but to feel strongly about the Chinese people as a whole. And even though later I started the Chinese Democratic Party, if that party too ceased to be something, became corrupt and ceased to be something that was working for the behalf of the Chinese people, I would also disassociate myself from that party. This idea of pursuing democracy is not something that started with my generation. It's something that has been in China for over 100 years now. One important time was in around 1840, and the Chinese had been repeatedly defeated in battles and war, and there were a number of Chinese thinkers and scholars that gathered together to think, how can we bring China back to this more prosperous and robust society. One of the things that Lincoln said that's been especially important is the idea of government of the people, by the people, for the people, and the sort of idea that the government is something that the people have a stake in, that the people, to some extent, that they own that process, something that we in China and the intellectuals in China have really taken to heart in a deep way. Because I didn't go into the closed university system, I served as a soldier in the Chinese army for 5 years. And then after that, I went into the factory life, electrical engineer, as I suppose what you would call it. And it was interesting because I found there that the rhetoric that I had heard, a Marxist ideal of the proletariat as being the rulers, and in some sense I saw that that was really just a bunch of lies passed on by the Communist Party. The factory workers that I was with and myself really had no freedom or to speak or power to influence anything. And that period and the influence it had on me was very significant because I was able to see the gaps in the rhetoric of the Communist Party. As someone working in the factories, we were able to see that the gap between us and the other Western countries was rising, and that the level even of the factory workers in other countries was much higher than our own. And people had often said that the problem with China was just that there are so many people in China. But I was able to see that Japan, which also has very, very many people, I mean, there's 100 million people on this small island, and that they were able to develop at such a quick pace was really, I guess, as someone who feels a sense of societal obligation, it was very disturbing. And it was in that time too, and sort of after seeing some of the things that had happened with the Cultural Revolution, that I was able to put the pieces together and realize that the reason that we were not having the sort of development that was happening in Japan or other countries was because that there was only one political party. And it was the same problem that had existed before when the KMT was in power. That there was one party, and in this case, it was controlled by Mao Zedong, and that system itself was just intrinsically flawed, and that it needed to be changed. In 1976 was a year in which 3 of the highest leaders in the Communist Party passed away, Zhou Enlai, Zhu De, and Mao Zedong. And when Zhou Enlai passed away, there were a lot of people who wanted to come out and mourn him, and sort of another part of it was that they also wanted to express their discontent with some of the policies of Mao Zedong. And on April 5th, I was there in Beijing. Mao Zedong had decided to suppress these demonstrations, and I was able to see with my own eyes the violent means that they took to suppress these people who were expressing themselves. And it was at that point when I saw that I became completely disillusioned with the Chinese Communist Party, and I saw that it really was something that could not be rehabilitated, that it was something that was just at its core rotten. And I guess that was really when I started my activist work. Though my father had passed away a long time ago, at the time of the demonstration, my mother was still alive, and I was married. I had gotten married in 1971, and we had a child in 1972. And as someone with the family, I mean, I had to consider the risk, the danger involved in that activity. And actually in 1976, at that particular incident, I wasn't involved as a participant, even though I was there watching and seeing that the Chinese Communist Party's actions actually wasn't acting on behalf of the the people of China. So after that, I started working on a book plan for the country, and to see what exactly direction it should go, and writing about political change. And it's interesting, even though I was involved working as a factory worker, really my true nature was an intellectual and was someone who was thinking about the greater political system and society and what direction things should go in.